Good evening, everybody. Hillary Clinton and the State Department that she once ran tonight are enmeshed in a stunning scandal, even by Clinton norms. Mrs. Clinton now faces allegations of collusion and corruption at the State Department and questions about the extent of corruption throughout the entire Obama administration. Newly released FBI records show that one of Mrs. Clinton's closest and most trusted aides at the State Department, Patrick Kennedy, tried to intimidate and bribe the FBI to downgrade the classification of Clinton's emails on her private server. And the alleged attempted bribe took place while former Secretary Clinton's records were under congressional subpoena. In exchange for lowering the classification, Kennedy suggested that he would allow the FBI to place more agents in key posts overseas. We'll have a full report for you tonight on the shocking bribe. Also tonight, an investigation underway in North Carolina after a firebomb attack against the Republican Party's headquarters in Orange County. Graffiti also spray painted on an adjacent building, warning Republicans to, quote, leave town or else. North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory says the firebombing is a direct attack on democracy. He's called in the State Bureau of Investigation.
This is much more than an act of vandalism, and that's one reason I called the SBI to ensure that we have an SBI agent actively involved with local authorities in this investigation. But I think initially this wasn't taken that seriously by some of the local authorities, but it is now.
It is now. Donald Trump also weighed in. He tweeted this, quote, animals representing Hillary Clinton and Dems in North Carolina just firebombed our office in Orange County because we are winning. Trump tonight is holding a rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin this hour, and we'll be bringing it to you when Trump does take the stage. And among our guests here tonight, former Reagan White House political director Ed Rollins, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, Michael Goodwin, former Pentagon official K.T. McFarland. We'll also be taking up this country's desperate need for real leadership, talking with legendary investor Wilbur Ross. In our top story tonight, Republican lawmakers calling on the State Department to fire Patrick Kennedy, the Undersecretary of State for Management. He is the aide who tried to cover up Hillary Clinton's email scandal by proposing a quid pro quo with the FBI. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has our report.
The FBI records make clear that Patrick Kennedy, one of Secretary Clinton's trusted lieutenants, wanted to do a deal with the FBI over the classification of Clinton emails, something the agent starkly termed a quid pro quo.
I think it's corruption. I think it's manipulation. I think it's against the law, and it certainly goes to the intent. Somebody should have been prosecuted for this.
According to the newly released FBI interviews known as 302s, Kennedy and an FBI agent discussed a swap. The FBI would downgrade a highly sensitive Clinton email to unclassified, and in return, the Bureau would get coveted slots for agents overseas. Quote, redacted indicated he had been contacted by Patrick Kennedy, who had asked his assistance in altering the email's classification in exchange for a quid pro quo. At a follow-up meeting with intelligence agency reps, the documents show Kennedy was determined to shield the emails from public release. Quote, Kennedy spent the next 15 minutes debating the classification of the email and attempting to influence the FBI to change its markings.
It wasn't some simple mistake that Hillary Clinton said it was. This is a concerted effort by a number of people to manipulate what was given to Congress, make sure that it never saw the light of day, and support Hillary Clinton.
The email dealt with the 2012 Benghazi terrorist attack, where 4 Americans, Ambassador Chris Stevens, Foreign Service Officer Sean Smith, and former Navy SEALs Ty Woods and Glenn Doherty were killed. The FBI official responsible for classifying records said, quote, State has an agenda, which involves minimizing the classified nature of the Clinton emails in order to protect state interests and those of Clinton.
Is that in keeping with the high ethical standards of the State Department?
We, Pat Kennedy, all of us at the State Department are going to make their case as best they can. That's called interagency exchange and the kind of discussions that we carry out all the time.
You're saying the FBI agent either got it wrong or is lying in this 302?
As I understand this, Catherine, this was any idea or any really assertion that this was somehow tit for tat or a quid pro quo exchange of in that manner really, frankly, is insulting.
While the email's classification was never changed, legal experts say even the discussion of a backroom deal violates federal law. Lou?
Catherine, thank you very much. Catherine Herridge reporting. The Clinton documents are on the FBI website. We believe this is a critically important story. It is important that you understand the story, and to help you in that, and I tell you, it certainly helped us, go to the FBI's own website. The documents at vault.fbi.gov. We want to suggest you read these pages for yourself. They're heavily redacted, we'll tell you that, and it does take some effort, and I will urge you to do so because, as I say, I think this is a critically important story. Pages 25 to 29. I will tell you at the same time that we don't know who at the FBI put these pages up on their website. We don't know whether it was the FBI director's orders. We don't know if it was against his orders or without the permission of appropriate authority, or if it was someone at the FBI learning an important lesson from WikiLeaks and simply publishing the truth. Either way, we would be pleased, and I know you would be as well. WikiLeaks today released more emails exposing Clinton's scandal-plagued campaign. It is the 10th tranche of these documents to be released to the public, some 15,000 emails so far. And there is more evidence pointing to blatant examples of national media collusion and the pay-to-play scandals that engulf the Clinton campaign, the Clinton cartel throughout. This email just released, The Hill columnist Brent Badowski, writing to campaign chairman John Podesta in February of last year, saying, quote, Clinton Foundation should cut off foreign donations ASAP. It would be good for the Clintons to get in the habit of cutting off downside risks of any kind. Podesta responds, working on it. Also, Clinton aides in an April 2015 email chain wrestling over whether the campaign should reject donations from those lobbying on behalf of foreign governments to avoid the appearance of impropriety. Clinton's campaign manager, Robbie Mook, wrote this, I'm okay just taking the money and dealing with any attacks. Communications director Jennifer Palmieri had the last words on the matter. She said this, take the money. Amazing. Also today, WikiLeaks, the victim of some sabotage, we're not entirely sure about the motivation, announcing that Julian Assange's internet link was intentionally severed by a state party. The group now tweeting, we can confirm that Ecuador has cut off Assange's internet access as of Saturday 5 p.m. GMT, shortly after publication of Clinton's Goldman Sachs speeches. Goldman Sachs has some influence. The Ecuadorian embassy in London is right next to the French embassy, a 10-minute ride to the Russian and American embassies, so geopolitically, Ecuador well situated, if not politically. Joining me now, former Reagan White House political director, Republican strategist, Great America PAC strategist, Ed Rollins, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, Michael Goodwin, both Fox News contributors. Michael, this is an extraordinary story that one agency of the Obama administration, one department trying to bribe the other. I mean, talk about pervasive corruption, that they would even have the confidence to do such a thing.
Well, and the way it was done, the way the traffic reads, is simply kind of business as usual. That's what, they didn't see any objection to, you give us what we want, we'll give you what you want. Both of these are monumental issues, you would think. I was struck too, Lou, by this is yet another example of how flawed the FBI investigation into the Clinton. I mean, we have learned so much through these documents that have been turned over to Congress after Comey made his statement of no prosecution, after he testified before Congress. It's all the things we've learned since that really look like just a series of crimes that were committed, and the FBI saw no evil.
You would think an assistant secretary, Ed, his knees would be shaking at the very thought of even intimating that he was putting forward a proposition to the FBI.
First of all, the Undersecretary for Management is a very powerful position. He controls all personnel, all budgets, all money, all embassies, everything that happens in the State Department other than the public policy, he's responsible for. So this isn't trading desks. And the mere fact that he had also security of all the embassies, Benghazi, every place else. So the fact that he wanted to take this one email and change the classification so he could bury it somewhere in the basement.
By the way, that is a direct quote from the 302, which is the interview of FBI agents that are redacted. You'll find them again at vault.fbi.gov, pages 25 through 29. But to think that Kennedy is saying bury it in the basement, by the way, and the point of that to mean that no Freedom of Information request would ever make it to it.
Obviously, it was an incriminating document, and it could have incriminated him, it could have been incriminating the secretary or what have you. And my sense is that obviously it's something to have been done. Equally as important, he was the guy who should have been responsible for the server and told her that she couldn't have the server, that it should be doing through the State Department. The idea that the FBI wants to have agents somewhere in the world is an important element. And to say that I won't give them to you unless you do this, this is not trading desks or trading personnel. This is a very, very vital security issue, and the Congress ought to just nail him totally.
I'm not being flip about this. I mean, it's too bad. It's too bad that no one had something to bargain with when the ambassador and 3 other Americans' lives were lost in Benghazi, because they might have been, if they could have traded for security, they'd be alive today.
Right.
This is so deeply appalling.
Well, and the issue, Lou, that this thing is buried in the basement. I mean, we don't even know what's in that email, but it was so important that they were doing everything they could to hide it. So it was never released. That was because it was classified. It was not released. So it must have been something. I think this is another aspect that Jason Chaffetz and Congress needs to find out. What was so important that it had to be hidden?
You know, it's disgusting. I mean, it's just so disgusting on every level. And there's a blackout in the national liberal media against WikiLeaks. And in this instance, this has nothing to do with WikiLeaks, national media. Right. This has everything to do with a moment of truth on the part of the FBI, and reach out to that web page right now, because so much awaits you there. And if you black this out, there will be a special place in hell reserved for everyone.
It probably won't last long on the FBI website.
It's extraordinary. There's so much to talk about. The firebombing in North Carolina. It's troubling.
Well, you can't get lost, though. There's 3 weeks to go to this election, and you can't put it off. This is a smoking gun, and they have to go find this thing.
Look, I think that this is something, obviously, that will not be resolved before Wednesday night, so it's going to have to be part of the debate. But again, we should remember...
Every Democrat in Congress should want to know what happened with the FBI.
Right.
Why this information presumably was not pushed up to the director, why he did not take action, why someone didn't stop this kind of behavior in what has become, obviously, a totally corrupt administration. Right. Whether it's the Department of Justice, the FBI, the State Department, still being run apparently by the former Secretary Hillary Clinton. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And Michael. We're coming right back. There is a lot more straight ahead. Stay with us. What a night of news it is. And Donald Trump is holding a rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin. His first event in the state since Paul Ryan denounced him. Trump slamming Ryan ahead of the rally. He tweeted this. Yes, I'm smiling because I'm always amused by these tweets. Paul Ryan, a man who doesn't know how to win. Parentheses, including failed run 4 years ago. We remember that one. Must start focusing on the budget, military, vets, etc. Quote, we have all got to come together and win this election. We can't have 4 more years of Obama or worse. And there is your nominee. Joining me now, billionaire investor Wilbur Ross, chairman, CEO of W.L. Ross & Company, one of the world's leading private equity firms, also economic advisor to the Trump campaign. Wilbur, great to have you with us. I have to say, that was fairly restrained for Donald, I think.
It was. It was the new, kinder, gentler Donald.
I mean, I call Ryan worse than that on the air almost every night.
But you're not trying to get his vote.
No, I'm sure not. As a matter of fact, anyway, we won't go into that tonight. We're looking at this corruption that is, I mean, it's patent, it's palpable, it is obvious. And where in the world is this Congress and this Senate? Why aren't they standing up behind Donald Trump and saying, this has got to stop now? You've got 3 weeks to get it straightened out.
Well, I don't understand why they haven't brought any action against her. Mm-hmm. She violated a subpoena, apparently.
Right.
She said things to them that don't seem to me to ring true.
Do you think Paul Ryan actually would have the guts to do that?
I don't know. I would have hoped
he hasn't.
So.
He hasn't to this point. Mitch McConnell has been in hiding. I mean, he's pulling a Hillary Clinton. He's in hiding leading up to the debate. Maybe he'll emerge in Las Vegas. What do you think?
I doubt that he'll emerge in Las Vegas.
Well, I do too. But as we look at what is going on here, how can there be anything but the pragmatic judgment on the part of any leader of the Republican Party that they've got to support the nominee to stop Hillary Clinton, to stop the corruption of this administration? My God, are they? What is wrong with these people? Are they such fanatical ideologues, and that they cannot understand their secular opportunity here, and that is to save the republic, for crying out loud?
Well, I think they run the great danger of destroying the Republican Party, because the millions of people who sent $25 and $50 to Donald Trump, they're not going to go away, whatever happens after the election. But I don't know they're going to come back to republicanism.
You know, I don't think that many folks right now care about the Republican Party. I really don't, because, I mean, they're showing their hind end, and in the form of Paul Ryan, whomever. They're rolling over to donors who obviously are pleased. I've got to say, I want to say Robert and Rebecca Mercer have shown more guts.
You bet they have.
And I really mean this, as money people behind Trump.
Right.
Staying with him, showing the way. I mean, I'm just not used to that from donors, and I want to say right here publicly how much I respect them for that.
Well, I agree with that, but I think the leadership of the Republican Party ought to remember party loyalty is a little like virginity. It's a lot easier to lose than it is to get back.
I've never heard that one. And I understood it right away. That's another.
Well, I could repeat it if it's too complicated.
Well, you know what? Repeat it again, because a lot of people, I think, would probably like to hear it again.
Okay. Party loyalty is like virginity. It's a lot easier to lose it than to get it back again.
Well, Paul Ryan had better try hard, and I hope some donors and I hope some people who have influence with him explain to him how the world works, because it's just insane what he's doing. Not only to the first district, but to the entire country. I mean, how could anyone make a judgment to continue to perpetuate this horrible situation?
Well, what really scares me the most is a whole generation of people are growing up knowing you can't trust anything. You can't trust venerable American institutions.
Right.
That's not a healthy thing for the country.
No, it's not. But at the same time, when you see this kind of ignorance on display by the leaders of the party that has an obligation to be the loyal opposition,
right.
Their cynicism is well placed. And by the way, the ratings for Congress, presage precisely where we are. The American public showing great judgment. We'll see what happens on November 8th. Wilbur, it's great to have you with us.
Good to be on, Lou. Thank you.
Good to see you. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Have you lost all trust in the mainstream media after their reporting over the course of this campaign? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. We'd like to hear from you. I've got a sneaking suspicion how this is going to work out. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. On Wall Street, stocks today began the week lower. The Dow down 52 points. The S&P lost 6. The Nasdaq down 14. Volume light trading again, 2.8 billion shares. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. You could not make anything that is happening in this country these days, you could not make it up. A few thoughts now on Hillary Clinton and those who drive the Clinton cartel, from the Near East desk of the State Department to the office of John Kerry himself, from the Clinton Foundation to the Justice Department, from the FBI to the White House. The stench of broken trust and public corruption fills the dank, heavy air of our Capitol. Despite what you may be told by the Clintons and their accomplices and co-corruptors, there are few accidents and seldom any coincidences in the dark, secretive Clinton realm of power. There is most often only careful calculation and orchestrated lies and deceit. In a monumental irony, the search for truth hidden by and behind the rotting bureaucracy of our federal government has been chiefly aided by the relentless stream of emails, documents, and secretive speeches given by Mrs. Clinton, all now revealed by WikiLeaks. The WikiLeaks releases confirm without exception that the Clinton cartel will do anything to hide the truth from Americans, giving life to the axiom she stated in a 2013 speech, saying, quote, "You need both a public and private position," end quote. Perhaps neither the truth. Mrs. Clinton didn't hesitate to delete some 30,000 emails from her private email server that she used for official State Department business. And now we find out that one of her trusted aides in her State Department proposed quid pro quo. That's Washington bull for the word bribe. A bribe to declassify an email from Clinton's server. Clinton's State Department remains in the Obama administration. It is a government within a government, and outrageously unafraid to try to bribe the FBI, for crying out loud. Corruption so pervasive that the State Department was confident in the sufficiency of the FBI's corruption that it would try to bribe agents and officials of that once proud institution. My God, my God. Clinton is committed to corruption. Clinton's still doing all she can to hide the truth about her email scandal, and last week objecting to all or part of 18 of the 25 questions asked by Judicial Watch by a judge's order. So confident the American public is unaware and compliant that she managed some 278 days before she held a press conference while running for the presidency, for crying out loud. A streak that continued until last month. And she hides not only truth, but obviously herself, holding no public events, by the way, until the debate Wednesday. And the only reason we know about the bribe attempted between two departments of the Obama administration is the Federal Bureau of Investigation apparently learned from WikiLeaks and simply posted these illuminating and incriminating documents on the FBI webpage. We don't know who authorized that or if indeed anyone did. I'd like to hope it was the director himself, finding honesty and courage to act this time. But if not, I thank whoever made the right choice for themselves, their storied agency, and for this nation. Thank you. We're coming right back. Well, it's getting tough on journalists in this country. It's a lot worse in Russia. Vladimir Putin warning journalists in the Russian press corps that U.S. intelligence agencies are watching their every move. Putin telling journalists covering his visit to India, quote, "The United States listens to everything and looks at everything. All of you are objects of exploitation for the special services." Joining me now, former Pentagon official, Fox News national security analyst K.T. McFarland, also a member of Donald Trump's National Security Advisory Committee. Great to have you here.
You.
Are we really that good, as Putin suggests, in India?
Well, I sure hope we're listening, because that's the job of our intelligence community, and I know that they're listening to us. And that's the world we live in, and we should understand it, and we should accept it and act accordingly.
Well, one thing we're not a part of, or hadn't been, is corruption, violation of the public trust in the measure that we're seeing now, and in the still Clinton State Department, it is pretty clear. In the Near East desk, the State Department itself, certainly within the influence, all of the State Department. actually having the guts to bribe the FBI, so sure they are of the seedy position in which the FBI now finds itself?
Do you remember a couple of years ago when House of Cards came out and everyone said, oh, it's not nearly that bad. That's exaggerated of what's life is like in Washington. Well, now we realize that the public corruption between the Justice Department, the FBI, the State Department, the intelligence communities is so in your face that it makes the House of Cards look like just a Sunday afternoon picnic.
You know, I saw a little in the national media today. They were having alligator tears in some agita because, Donald Trump was suggesting the elections are rigged, and how unfortunate that is for young people to hear that. These bloviating idiots are following by 1 week the report by Pew Research that there are 18 million questionable registrations in this country. What kind of moronic National Press Corps do we have that they ignore the empirical and the obvious?
Well, that's because they're in on the game. It's the donor class, it's the media, it's the establishment, Republican and Democrat establishment, at the expense of the little guy. That's why we're seeing a national revolt, whether it's the Bernie people or whether it's the Trump people. People say, I'm not being represented, I don't have a voice anymore, and I'm mad.
Word is that Putin didn't hack the DNC.
Actually, I talked to the people responsible for the Republican National Committee security, cybersecurity. They said, well, everybody's trying to hack everybody else. It's just the Republicans are better protected. That a lot of it is just the lapses of security.
But you haven't said that they have anything more to protect.
Well, it just shows.
They built a giant wall, but what the heck's behind it? We're going to find out. Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, they're pipes and slippers, a couch for comfort and fainting. I mean, what are they? I mean, who do they protect behind that tremendous firewall?
Well, but I think it speaks to the position that Russia now finds itself in, that they can push, and there's no pushback.
Push. I got push.
Yeah.
All right? But I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Everybody, including the President of the United States, out talking Russia is hacking the DNC, and there's an outright denial of that. And further, it was.
Well, we don't know.
It's always been speculation.
Yeah.
But I love how it becomes, inured to any new development, and the speculation becomes hard truth.
We don't know, and that's the whole thing about cyber is you never know the return address for 100 days.
Can I tell you, when I hear this, I think of it as akin to the damn long war perpetrated by David Petraeus, which is another rational. It's not just a title. It's a rationalization for generals who can't figure out how the hell to win.
How to win? Yes, exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
And this thing about cybersecurity, it's all dark and mysterious,
you can't figure it out.
Well, apparently somebody can, the Chinese, the Russians, the Romanians, but we can't? Are you kidding me?
We have the ability to tear down their cyber walls. That is our ultimate weapon against them. We're not using it. We could use it. That makes them really scrambled and really nervous.
I can see fear on Putin's face every time he shows up on this broadcast. KT, thanks so much for being with us. KT McFarland. Tonight, as I said, holding a rally in Wisconsin, and according to the Real Clear Politics polling average, Clinton now has a 6-point lead in the battleground state. Trump is at the KI Convention Center in Green Bay and talking about the FBI documents. Let's listen in.
33,000 emails, the disappearance of 13 phones.
How many people are there?
Get them out. Take them out.
I think when you're campaigning with a rally, this many people in Green Bay, and still get a protester or two or however many it is. I was trying to find out how many are there. I mean, there is so much energy in these rallies, the Donald Trumps. It's an extraordinary comparison. Literally, the last rally, and I believe it was in Miami, Hillary Clinton had 750 people, and she had the big draw of the former vice president, Al Gore, with her. And he getting tens of thousands, of course. Let's go back to Donald Trump.
This is an amazing group. But you know what? Keep doing it. It's more fun that way, right? Because frankly, if you didn't do that, you wouldn't even hear this guy. But that's okay. Thank you, honey. Thank you very much. So you have the disappearance of 13 iPhones, many of them whacked with a hammer. Who here has gotten rid of your phone and hit it with a hammer? Anybody? How many people? Anybody? Nobody? One? Oh, I want to find out the business that guy's in. But she whacked them, a lot of them with her hammer. Just whacked them.
He's going through the issues of the emails, the destroyed by hammer. Some of them, as he points out, the devices. Turns out there were 13, not the one that Hillary Clinton said she had possessed. Joining me now, former Arkansas governor, former Republican presidential candidate Mike Huckabee. Mike, great to have you with us. This crowd is so charged up, and the background in the news arena is so terrible for Hillary Clinton. Do you believe we're going to, at some point, see the cumulative weight of all of these revealed corrupt practices and events come crashing down over her head?
You know, I really hope so, Lou, but the problem that we've got is that Donald Trump is not just running against Hillary. He's running against all of the media. And then he's running against what I call the bedwetting Republicans who are so afraid of their own shadow that they're afraid to stand with Trump. They are de facto supporters of Hillary, whether they believe it or not and understand it or not. And he has an enormous challenge ahead of him because of those factors. But I just want to believe that out there in America, what we're seeing in the rallies is what people are feeling in their homes. And even if they don't tell a pollster they're going to vote for Trump because they don't want to be called a bigot or a racist, when they walk in that booth, they know that their country and their future is on the line, and they're not about to vote for a corrupt politician like Hillary Clinton. And every day we learn more about the corruption.
How fanatical must one be, particularly a Republican leader, to eschew any kind of secular judgment about Hillary Clinton? She is so obviously, extraordinarily acting against the interests of American citizens and working men and women and their families, whether it's illegal immigration, whether it is the so-called trade policies, which it turns out now she's been lying about throughout. She is for the TPP. She is for the European deal. Because she has a public and private position, and forget about what she says in public because it's nearer the truth what she says in private.
Well, Lou, just like Obama, she's a globalist. Her real interest is in the global economy, not the American economy. And if people want to be globalists, then vote for Hillary, because that's what you're going to get. It means the virtual end of the United States as a world leader as we know it. And we'll just be an also-ran like many of the European countries. But if people really care about America being first, America being a superpower and a leader, then they've really only got one choice. Yeah. And let's face it, the reason that some of the Republicans are playing this game of acting like, oh, we can't support Donald Trump, Lou, they're not afraid he's going to lose. They're afraid he's going to win.
No, I think you're exactly right about that.
They
Mike.
lose their power with the donor class. That's really scaring them to death.
And it scares the rest of us that for whatever reason someone would choose to continue a level of corruption the likes of which this nation has heretofore never seen. Governor Mike Huckabee, thanks so much for being with us. In our online poll over the weekend, we asked, do you believe the American public is so unaware and compliant, those words of the Clinton campaign, that Hillary Clinton could actually be elected president? Here's a horrifying thought. 68% of you said yes. We got to fix that, don't we? Joining me now, the former SEAL Team 6 leader who killed Osama bin Laden, Rob O'Neill, also Fox News contributor. Rob, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Lou. Great to be here.
Mosul, under siege now. 6 villages at the last count taken on the perimeter of Mosul. Your expectations?
Well, right now they're surrounding Mosul. They want to find a spot where ISIS can no longer escape. So they got some Kurds to the north and east, and then the Iraqi military to the south. And Turkey's involved a little bit. We're not sure how much or how much people are saying, but they're just going to surround it right now. They're telling the people to stay inside their homes, and then The villages they're taking right now are mainly former Christian villages and sites of the worst atrocities that ISIS would commit. So they're not going to meet a lot of resistance. There are meeting some resistance. They're pounding them. But once they get into the urban combat in Mosul proper, it could be a really ugly fight that could take months.
An ugly fight that could take months. And when I hear that, I think we'll have a new president, likely.
Probably.
This is judged over. But Americans engaged there. I love this attitude that's developing among some of the political elites, and particularly Hillary Clinton, who talk about special operators, special forces, as if they're not ground troops, as if they're not Americans.
Well, you'll notice, too, when they start talking about on the ground, they'll say that, well, they're advisors and they're intelligence. And they did admit today, though, I'm not sure it was on purpose, they said forward air controllers, which are the guys controlling the coalition aircraft. So they're there. I mean, they'll say, okay, but they're not on the front lines. Okay, well, you're in a spot where the front lines isn't really that. It's not obvious really what it is. And the guys that I know that are there, and there are special forces there from, Marine Corps, Army, Navy, they're trying to get as close as they can to the front lines at every chance they get. They're, beg, borrow, steal, try to get there. But there are Americans there. They are engaged in the fight, and because that's the whole thing. I've been there a bunch of times. This is an Iraqi-led mission or an Afghan-led mission. It's more of a, all right, how do we get them to do something and kind of stay out of our way as we hit the objective?
And the relationship between the Iranians and the Iraqis.